the feeling of always having to be perfect. You're always having to be perfect. You're always being evaluated every step of the day, whether it's academically, physically, militarily. And so, in that aspect, it makes it very hard for someone to step out and be deviant from those lines. And when you feel like you can't be yourself, I feel like that has a lot to do with depression. You feel like you're not good enough.
I think that with like the competitiveness of certain things kind of creates divide, which may make people feel like they don't belong. It discludes people, and then those people probably, like, especially if you're like you're a plebe and you're trying to find yourself, right? You have to find yourself within others as well. And if they don't have that connectedness with people, then they can disconnect from themselves and then really lose themselves, and then causes them to be depressed.
Yeah, I just think that we don't, like we choose not to notice it or kind of like shove it away and like see it as like normal, and we normalize depression, and it's really dangerous in that way. Yeah, like whenever people come up to me and like, or come up to others too, and are like, hey, like, this guy going and it's kind of sucky and I'm kind of feeling this way, we're like, okay, we're all feeling this way. And I think that's really unhealthy.
I definitely think there's a culture here, especially with like male cadets in general. You got to keep things in. You can't seem weak, which is stupid. There's a lot of times where everything, like the whole Thayer method in itself, you're teaching yourself, you're not really asking for help, and that burden falls on you. And whether it be military or physical, it's always, you have to do this, you have to do that. If you're not strong enough to do this or do that, you're gonna have to go and search for help. Help won't come and find you. And it just like continues that cycle of, you're not strong enough, you need to be strong.
Like always kind of having that competitive like atmosphere of like class rank, like trying to be number one in everything that you do. I think really puts emphasis on like, if you're not number one, like you're doing something wrong. And kind of the feeling of like everyone's against you.
West Point views those who seek help for mental illness as weaker than those without it, because they view leaders as those with mental competency, and so those who don't show proficiency in their mental health are viewed as lesser than those who don't need to go and seek help.
I think it's the expectations they want of us. Like, I mean, this is a military academy, so they want us to embrace this different type of attitude and sense of personality, So I guess with that stems different rules and expectations that are supposed to be had of us. Like, they want us to become leaders, and we're supposed to be that image that people go to when everyone else is feeling at a bad time. So we're not really given that space to be that person who needs help.
I think that the difference between West Point and civilian schools that make it a lot harder on cadets is the fact that we have a regimented schedule that doesn't really allow for time to ourselves, for self-reflection and development, because that's like a crucial, we're in a crucial part of our life where we're starting to develop into adults, and it's hard to do that when we can't reflect on what we're doing and reflect on our like common mistakes. So that's what makes it really hard, and that's what kind of will lead into a depression, because we're supposed to be developing, but we're in this stagnant state because we're not allowed or given the time to just be by ourselves and kind of reflect on what we're doing. Another thing is that we're forced to interact with certain cadets that don't really help us in the development process. We're not going to like everyone that we come across, and we're forced to interact with them and to work with them, and some of us don't have the skills yet to do that, to be able to remove ourselves and still interact with those people that might not help us in our development stages, it's very needed to have a lot of support and people around us in order to develop, but a lot of us don't have the skill yet or are not mature enough to pick the right people. And so forcing us to do stuff like that and putting us in that type of environment, it's not really conducive to our development as adults. And that's what can also lead to depression, because we can't distinguish certain things that we're supposed to be doing, and it's very confusing and it's a very lonely place.
West Point's main difference from other colleges is that its goal is to create a fully integrated society, and whenever that doesn't happen and or it's not a smooth integration, people become depressed and or feel the pressure to integrate and be successful here.
I think we're working towards one. I wouldn't say that there's one in place now. Having those tough conversations is definitely a step in the right direction, but I personally believe that experience is what makes a person, and knowing that person's experience and having empathy towards it will definitely change a lot of the negativity. And although, yes, the tough conversations do bring out some poor experiences, you also don't know the truth behind a lot of the things that have happened in people's lives. Like, especially mine. I had a freaking awful childhood, you know.
Personally, I think that like through CEP at least, like there's like one way that you can reach out, but I like when I was going through stuff and like still am, I really never was able to reach out because CEP was really like booked all the time, and like the only people that I was able to reach out to were like my roommates or friends, and it's those like really the only sources that I found like comfort in, like telling people and talking to people, and it wasn't exactly like sources that West Point gave to us, if that makes sense.
You know, depression is just like, you don't know why, and there's no circumstances that help you with that. So it's like, they could definitely do like classes, or like the CCEP thing, they could definitely do like, what is depression? What do people with depression feel like? You know, even if you're not ever gonna have it, or like actual anxiety. But they're not teaching people what it is, right? It's not just being sad, you know, like what an episode is. Because people here have it, but you would never even know just by looking at them. Across like our sister academies and here, you know, kill themselves, and it's like, it shouldn't even get to that point. Like with Cade Carita, like yeah, he probably had high functioning depression. He took antidepressants. It's also persistent depression, and people, they said they didn't even know it because he's the happiest kid alive. But when like internally, he literally doesn't know what to do with himself. And it's like, if people would have understood like how to find those things within depression, they could probably pick out little tiny things within him and be like, there might be something wrong, let me talk to him. You know what I mean? So that could have helped save him maybe.
I think we need to stop normalizing that depression here at West Point because it's really dangerous, and I know that a lot of us are going through it, and it's definitely worse for some, and we just need to be able to lean on each other.
And for those of you that are depressed, just know people out here care about you and that you are loved.
To a person who is depressed and you feel like no one may be there for you, I would say there's definitely purpose to what you may be going through right now. And I would say it's temporarily, not forever, and there's definitely always a way out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no problem.